Work Besties, welcome back. We got a fun one today. We're talking about the business of content creation. So everything that kind of goes on the back end before you see that 30-second video or photo ad on your social media profile. So I've spent the last couple years learning the back end of the industry, and I'm gonna walk you through some things you may or may not know about making money, content creating, branded ads. That did not flow. Let's try that again. I'm gonna walk you through kind of the process of what it looks like behind the scenes when you're working with a brand to create partnered content for social media. Just to give you some context, the influencer marketing industry as a whole has grown so much over the last couple years that in 2024, it's estimated to hit $24 billion US. That's a lot of money. You may have seen some of your favorite creators online receiving PR packages, but how does that work? How do they send them? Are there any obligations to post when you receive them? We're gonna touch on that just quickly, and then we're gonna get into the whole process of how it works working with a brand behind the scenes, because it's very similar to a corporate job in many, many ways. Let's get into things, shall we? So let's start with the PR. PR, gifting, there's lots of different terminologies for it. So what exactly is that? It's basically companies create these massive marketing packages, PR packages, to send out to a curated list of people. I'm gonna imagine the hopes or intention of what happens when they receive it can vary across companies, but basically, you receive these packages, how do you get on the list? So, I mean, there's a multitude of different ways. Sometimes brands will reach out to you and say, are you interested in receiving this product? Sometimes things just arrive and you're like, how did you get my address? Sometimes you get put on a list and the list can be shared within a couple different companies and you just kind of get sent out mailers. Essentially, things just start to arrive. And do you know that they're coming? Rarely. They kind of just show up. And it's really awesome because I mean, it's like getting a gift all the time, and obviously who doesn't love free stuff? The packaging gets pretty wild. I wish I had some examples to show you. I've already recycled them all, but the packages are just getting so extravagant, which is really aesthetically pleasing, but on the other hand, it's also a lot of waste, which my mind usually goes that way. When I see a really exuberant package, I'm like, oh wow, that's a lot of waste. It's beautiful. Beautiful waste, but still waste nonetheless. So that's basically a PR package will arrive, and are there any obligations to do anything with it once it arrives? No, you're not in contract or anything. They just send it to you as a gift, and sometimes they'll include different letters or mailers to you to say, oh, if you post this on social media, you can use this hashtag or you can tag the brand. And of course, there's an underlying kind of hope from the brand that you will share these products. How I kind of approach PR is more, oh, it's an opportunity to try a product, potentially build a relationship with a company that perhaps in the future I might want to work with, because for me, if I'm just receiving something, how do I know I want to share it if I haven't even tried it yet? I think there's, different ways that you can approach PR, but that's kind of how it is. It is a no strings attached. It is a gifting. That's basically PR. Let's get into the good stuff now. So the business of content creating, what even goes on behind the scenes? How does it get from the start of working with a brand to the final product, which is what everyone sees on social media? Step one is you get in contact with the brands. For me personally, I work with some brands that I've had relationships with for the last, several years. When you get in contact with a brand, it's really important that you kind of build relationship. You're communicating through email, maybe you're having meetings together. Once you get connected with the brand and they reach out and they say, hey, we have this campaign that we'd like you to be involved in. You kind of review, okay, what are the timelines? What kind of deliverables do you want? Deliverable being, do you want a set of Instagram stories? Do you want one TikTok video? Do you want one YouTube video? Like, it really depends what they're looking for. They'll kind of send you over the campaign brief with more high-level details of like, this is the product or service we're looking to advertise. This is kind of the direction of the content or the vibe we're going for. And then you can kind of assess, yes, this is something I'd like to learn more about, or yeah, this opportunity really isn't for me. So it's usually that initial kind of email that breaks the ice of like, are we gonna do this thing? Once you receive all of these campaign deliverables, then it goes into how are you gonna price this thing? Usually the company asks you to come back with a quote, and many creators, what I've learned is you create a media kit or a rate sheet, and a rate sheet can go inside your media kit. Media kit usually has examples of past work, how you like to work together, deliverable lists, and then prices associated with that. Oh my gosh, I can make a whole video on how exactly you come up with pricing for it, but it's basically a combination of how many followers you have, how good your engagement is, the time required for it, and then there's multiple things that you can charge for aside from just the video itself. So you could charge for the video, If a brand wants any exclusivity, that could be an additional charge. Any whitelisting or paid boosting on their end could be an additional charge. If they want to use it for organic usage on their own socials, that's an additional charge. So there's multiple things that can be charged for when working with brands. And that media kit kind of encompasses all those charges together so that it's a quick kind of, here's my rates, and it gives you a starting point for negotiation. Because when a company comes to you and say they're like, oh, I just want one video, then it's easy, oh, here's the rate, it is what it is. Or a company could come to you and say, hey, we want to make this a longer term partnership, a little bit bigger than just a video. Here's the multiple deliverables. Let's negotiate a bundled price together that isn't going to equate to all of the items on your media kit equals a dollar amount. It's going to be kind of a back and forth of negotiation. So there's a lot of negotiation that goes on in the back end. Where are we now? So we've sent the media kit, we've done a lot of negotiations back and forth, and now we're getting to a point of, okay, we're going to move forward. We've come to an agreement terms on how the payment looks. Next step, we head into contracting. So the company will link up with usually who you're dealing with is more the marketing teams, the PR teams, the social media teams. And once you move into contracting, then the legal team will get involved and they'll come back with an entire contract. I've seen contracts from 4 pages up to 40 pages. And then they send it to you and it's on your terms now to review everything line by line. Yes, I read every single line on them. When I first started my first couple, branded opportunities, I spent hours Googling, what does this mean? What is this legal terminology? What is this? To kind of figure out what things are in like regular terms, because everything's in legal speak, right? And then you come back with any changes, edits, modifications you want to make to the contract. And there's honestly, from my experience, there's usually multiple. So I go through it, I send all of my edits back, my team sends their edits back, we send it back to the brand and say, here's the requested changes. They meet with their legal teams, they go through, okay, yes, we can accept this change, we can modify this, we can't do this. So you go back and forth a few times until you have a clean agreement, and then both signatures on both ends happen. Cool? Now we're at the point where you can actually get started on the creative element to it. So usually there's a deliverable timeline. This could be anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months. It really depends on the length of how much time you have before the campaign launches and how much time it took you to get through the contracting phase. But the first thing is usually submitting creative concepts. Company A has asked me to create a creative concept for their product and they want it to be integrated in a video. And then I'm jumping on a briefing call with them to understand, okay, what are your requirements from a branding and marketing perspective of any call to actions, any specific text that needs to be on screen, anything specifically that needs to be added to script, any campaign taglines? And then I take that away and I'm like, how can I make this as least addy as possible while still hitting all of their goals and marketing objectives? And I try to make a script that, okay, it's still gonna be entertaining and fit with my content for my audience, still hits all of the brand's requirements, and then I submit my creative concept for their approval. It goes back to their team, they go through review processes. Some companies are way faster than others, just depends how many kind of departments they have to go through and how many levels they have to go through. And then once creative gets approved, oh, I have a dog under my feet. Excuse me, I did not see you there, you blend into the floor. All right, where was I? So once I've submitted creative concepts, they come back, they say, okay, yes, it's approved, or no, we need these edits. Great, fine, maybe another meeting's required, a whole lot of emails between the two. At that point, once I have approval for creative, then I can go into my filming and execution. Then it moves on to filming, editing, sending it back to the brand. They have to review the content again, send it through all of their departments. Usually legal has to get involved again, I guess depending on the brand. And then they come back and say, okay, we need these edits, change the video, or everything looks good, we're ready to go, let's schedule post to go live this date. And then once that post date comes, you get all your content posted, and that's pretty much the bulk of it. However, mostly every company will require you to send some sort of analytics, whether that's 24 hours after or 48 or a week after, to send them analytics of the performance so that they can obviously gauge how it performed. And I will say every company has a different version of success when it comes to the campaign. Some companies just want brand exposure. Some companies want return on investment. They want to see conversion rates. Some companies, like everyone has their different goals and they don't normally expose that to you. So you just send all of your analytics, and then once that is completed or when your posts are completed, then you go into invoicing to send off to the brand. and then you get your payment terms and all that good stuff. And then that marks the end of that one campaign. So all of that work in the back end might have taken, you know, a month or two to do for that 30-second video. So there is quite a lot of meetings on the back end, a lot of emails, a lot of really boring work, because reviewing contracts is like the least exciting thing ever. But there's so much behind the scenes that happens that's like very, to me, very corporate life. I mean, you're working directly with these corporations, with, you know, the people on the other end that are on marketing teams and PR teams. And so the work before the content feels very 9 to 5. Your output is just creative. Your output is just your video. That's the product that you're providing them with. Sometimes the service as consulting, creative consulting, you can help coming up with different ideas for campaigns. Like sometimes I've had brands reach out with their brief, and then I come back and I say, you know, have you considered this direction? I think that this would really work better for the direction that you're intending to go when it comes to the content. And so sometimes you do some consulting as well. And so there's a lot that goes into the back end that I've just been fascinated by, because I think before I had the opportunity to make money through branded opportunities and to work on the content creation side, I had a lot of questions about how it worked. I didn't really know. And I kind of, you know, had to make a lot up as I went, because I was so new to things and there wasn't a lot of information online in terms of how things operate, because the reality is I think everyone does it a little bit differently. I know some creators I know have agents, and the agents take care of all the back end stuff. So negotiating with the brands, finding the brands, pitching their clients to the brands, doing all like the contract reviews and all that stuff. The agency just takes care of that. But with that comes, I think it's pretty typical that they take 20% of whatever you make within that brand campaign, but you're paying them for removing all of that extra effort and meetings and emails and everything like that. So it makes sense for some. Others, they just do it themselves in-house, and then they obviously make 100% of what they make on that contract, and they do a lot of the back end stuff. So everyone does operate very differently. But that is what I've learned from my last couple years of just learning the back end of the industry. It's been really fascinating. It's been really rewarding. I think it's really cool to see kind of and be able to connect with marketing teams and PR teams across different countries. Well, sometimes different countries, but different companies in terms of how they operate and how they work, and being more of a contractor versus like a direct employee for a lot of companies has been really neat. I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to even learn all about this. The industry just continues to grow too, so I'm excited to kind of see where it goes. I know AI is going to play quite a bit into, or at least I've heard that it's going to play into quite a bit of the influencer industry moving forward, especially in terms of how AI will be able to identify influencers for campaigns. Very curious to see how that one kind of plays out. Maybe this was interesting to you. Maybe it wasn't. I have my notes here. I'm just making sure I touched on everything, because I want to make sure that was like kind of as thorough as possible. That was it. Maybe you learned something. Maybe you didn't. Maybe this was interesting to you, and maybe you're like, I don't care. And that's cool too. But I appreciate you being here as always. I'll see you in the next video, work besties. Toodaloo.